I am of the strong opinion that the society at large needs to be represented when we have to move forward in the direction of smart, inclusive, and sustainable cities.
Well, our infrastructure should be something which should be able to cater to the needs of the city for next 20, 30, maybe say 40 years.
Smart city mission, rather than keeping it like a mission, it should be a continuous agency supported by central government as well as by the state government throughout.
Biggest threat to the urban development is the urban sprawl which is happening in the slum area and creating intra-city imbalances.
So the whole process in which we are designing our development timeline or our development milestones needs a rethink, and therein comes the whole concept of participative governance.
I believe all the actions of municipal corporation or the smart city are targeted so that every household, every section of society can have a better livelihood opportunity.
Good afternoon, everyone, and a warm welcome to all the panelists here. Thank you so much for taking your precious time out on this. We've been hearing a lot of sessions, on smart cities since yesterday on various topics, including urban planning, ranging to how the mission development has happened, what we have achieved, what are the challenges. This is an opportunity to hear firsthand from the people who are actually making things happen on the ground. So we have it here, the CEOs, which is the apex position of the smart city, the administrator who runs the smart city, who makes things happen. What we want to hear from them, as you've heard, that multiplicity of organizations leads to challenges. And until the leaders themselves are empowered, there is very little that can actually be affected on the ground. So one topic that we need to discuss today is what are the challenges in empowering the leaders to ensure that we achieve our mission goals. The second topic we want to talk about is something I think our country really needs to think about more and more as we progress, is the inclusivity. Inclusivity of different ethnic groups, different social groups, different economic groups, and gender. So these are the two things that we will talk about. So why don't we start initially asking the experience that, let's say, Silvassa as a city has had, and if Charmie ma'am, if you can help us understand, what were some of the challenges that you had from a governance perspective, and even more, from an inclusion perspective, what is it that you did? Because Silvassa as a city itself is very different in the way that it has come up versus many other cities.
We, as our speakers are going to be joining us, we play for you a video message of the former Secretary of the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. He's presently the Chief Secretary, Government of Uttar Pradesh, Shri Durga Shankar Mishra ji. As we all know, Shri Durga Shankar Mishra ji has played a very important and a pivotal role in the Smart City mission when he was the Secretary, Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. And I'm sure what he voices in this video, the aim, the vision which the Government of India has of the smart cities, what should be the way forward, is going to be further setting the tone and the context of our session. So if you can play the video of Durga Shankar Mishra ji.
7th Smart City India Conference and Expo, जो कि ITPO और एग्जीबिशन इंडिया ग्रुप के द्वारा 23 और 25 मार्च के बीच आयोजित किया जा रहा है। इसके लिए मैं उन्हें बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देना चाहूँगा। पिछले 6 इस प्रकार के कॉन्फ्रेंसेस में भारत सरकार में कार्य करते हुए मुझे लगभग हर बार भाग लेने का मौका मिला। मैंने देखा कि किस प्रकार से ITPO में देश से विदेश से विभिन्न प्रकार के स्मार्ट एलिमेंट्स, चाहे वो बिल्डिंग के बारे में हो, सैनिटेशन एंड क्लीननेस के बारे में हो, वाटर के बारे में हो, एनर्जी के बारे में हो, ट्रांसपोर्ट के बारे में हो, इनका जगह जगह प्रदर्शन होता है। और पूरे देश भर से न केवल स्मार्ट सिटी बल्कि वो तमाम सारे स्टेक होल्डर्स जिस प्रकार की व्यवस्था पे काम कर रहे हैं वो भाग लेते हैं और उससे बहुत कुछ लर्निंग लेकर के वापस अपने क्षेत्र में जहाँ वो काम कर रहे हैं उसको करने का प्रयास करते हैं। ये साल हमारे लिए बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण साल है, जब पूरा देश आज़ादी का अमृत महोत्सव मना रहा है। ये साल हमारी स्मार्ट सिटी मिशन, जिसका शुभारंभ 25 जून 2015 को माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने किया था, उन्होंने पहले बार हमें बताया था कि स्मार्ट सिटी का क्या मतलब है, गेटिंग मोर फ्रॉम लेस। कैसे हमारे शहर अपने सिटीजन्स की आवश्यकताओं की पूर्ति करेंगे अपने संसाधनों के माध्यम से, कैसे हमारे शहर इस प्रकार की व्यवस्था देंगे जिससे कि नागरिक अपने हर उस सपने को पूरा करने में सक्षम होगा, सहूलियत के साथ, ईज ऑफ लिविंग के साथ, जो कि वो करना चाहता है, चाहे किसी भी क्षेत्र में। कैसे हर एक नागरिक देश की अर्थव्यवस्था का एक अभिन्न अंग बन सके, इसके बारे में पिछले 6-6.5 सालों में काफी प्रगति हुई है। आज जो 100 स्मार्ट सिटीज थे, किसी भी शहर में आप जाकर के देखेंगे तो वहाँ पे लोगों के जीवन में काफ़ी ऐसी सहूलियतें आई हैं, ऐसे उनकी लिविंग इतनी आसान हो गई है, या उनको ऐसी व्यवस्था जो पहले नहीं थी वो अब मिलनी चालू हो गई। अभी पूरा रास्ता कंप्लीट नहीं हुआ, लेकिन अभी भी बहुत कुछ चीज़ें हो चुकी हैं। उदाहरण के लिए, चाहे स्मार्ट रोड की व्यवस्था हो, स्मार्ट वाटर की व्यवस्था हो, स्मार्ट सोलर सिस्टम की व्यवस्था हो, स्मार्ट लाइफ स्पेसेस की व्यवस्था हो, जहाँ पे सिटीजन्स उसको जाकर के देख सकते हैं, तमाम सारी चीज़ें जो हमारी सिटीजन रिलेटेड एक्टिविटीज़ को कर सकते हैं। स्मार्ट पार्क की व्यवस्था हो, वाटर बॉडीज़ के मैनेजमेंट की व्यवस्था हो, हमारे कल्चरल एलिमेंट्स जैसे कि म्यूजियम या अन्य हमारे कल्चरल या हमारे जो स्वतंत्रता संग्राम से चीज़ें जो जुड़ी हुई हैं उनकी व्यवस्था, इसमें बहुत सारे परिवर्तन हुए। ट्रांसपोर्ट के बारे में परिवर्तन हुए। इनफैक्ट लगभग 4.5 साल से ज़्यादा अवधि में सचिव आवासन एवं शहरी कार्यक्रम पे मैंने इसे पूरे देश पे आगे करने की कोशिश की, और आज हमारी स्थिति है कि हम तमाम सारे बाहर के लोगों को भी, बाहर के देशों में भी इस बात को बता सकते हैं कि किसी शहर को स्मार्ट करने के लिए क्या काम करने का सुझाव है। जहाँ तक हमारे प्रदेश उत्तर प्रदेश का सवाल है, उत्तर प्रदेश में 10 शहर स्मार्ट सिटी के रूप में चयनित किए गए, 4 चरणों के चैलेंज प्रोसेस में। इसके अलावा राज्य सरकार ने अपने स्तर से जो बचे हुए 7 नगर निगम थे, उन सबको भी राज्य स्तर का स्मार्ट सिटी घोषित किया, और उन सब में भी वही व्यवस्था लाने की कोशिश की जो कि स्मार्ट सिटी भारत सरकार के द्वारा 50-50 फंडिंग के आधार पर शुरुआत की गई। आज हमारे 10 शहरों में 5 शहर पूरे देश के स्मार्ट सिटी के क्रियान्वयन में प्रथम 20 में आते हैं। बाकी शहरों में भी बहुत तेजी से विकास हो रहा है। आप सोचते होंगे कि आखिरकार स्मार्टनेस का मतलब क्या हुआ। मैं आपको बताता हूँ। हाल में जब महाकुंभ हुआ था प्रयागराज में, 1 करोड़ से ज्यादा लोगों ने एक दिन में स्नान किया। कई करोड़ों लोग वहां पे, इतनी सारी फ्लोटिंग पॉपुलेशन थी। कोई घटना हुई? बिल्कुल नहीं, क्योंकि हर जगह हमारा इंटीग्रेटेड कमांड एंड कंट्रोल सेंटर की पहुंच लगभग उन सारी जगह पे थी जहां पे पब्लिक का मूवमेंट। कई किस्म की आपदाएं, चाहे वो काकीनाडा में साइक्लोन का असर रहा हो, वडोदरा में बाढ़ का असर रहा हो, ऐसे तमाम सारी आपदाएं आई जो हमारी डिजास्टर जिसको कहते हैं। लेकिन किस प्रकार से उसको मैनेज किया गया, इंटीग्रेटेड कमांड एंड कंट्रोल सेंटर का मुकम्मल बहुत सारी बड़ी बड़ी रैलियां, जुलूस या ऐसे धार्मिक आयोजन हुए, वहाँ पे भी इंटीग्रेटेड कमांड कंट्रोल सिस्टम के माध्यम से नियंत्रण रखा गया। आज कई सारे शहरों में क्राइम के ऊपर कमी आई है। लोगों में जो ट्रांसपोर्ट के नियम उसको पालन करने के लिए एक और बेहतरी हुई है। कैसे? क्योंकि उन्हें मालूम है कि हर जगह आपको एक आई है, वो आपको देख रही है। अगर आप किसी प्रकार का वायलेशन करेंगे बगैर किसी रोका टोकी के, आपको सीधे आपका नोटिस पहुंच जाएगा, यानी आपका कंप्लायंस बेहतर हुआ है। जो सबसे बड़ा एग्जाम्पल अभी हाल के समय में कोविड-19 का एक त्रासदी, जो एक वैश्विक महामारी थी, पूरी दुनिया को हिला कर रख दी, पूरी दुनिया की अर्थव्यवस्था को, वहाँ के तमाम सारे मेडिकल सिस्टम को हिला कर रख दी। ऐसे में हमारे स्मार्ट कमांड एंड कंट्रोल सेंटर से बहुत बड़ी भूमिका अदा की, जिसके बारे में पूरा डिटेल्स मंत्रालय के वेबसाइट के ऊपर एक अलग से डॉक्यूमेंटेशन हम लोगों ने किया कि किस प्रकार से कोविड-19 की चुनौतियों को, चाहे वो पहला चढ़ रहा हो, दूसरा चढ़ रहा हो, उसको कैसे ये कार्य किया गया। आज चाहे ट्रांसपोर्ट की व्यवस्था हो, क्लीननेस एंड सैनिटेशन की व्यवस्था हो, एनर्जी के सही प्रयोग करने की व्यवस्था हो, स्मार्ट हेल्थ सिस्टम की व्यवस्था हो, स्मार्ट एजुकेशन की व्यवस्था हो, इसमें तमाम सारे ऐसे हमारे देश में ऐसे ऐसे कार्य किए गए जो कि दूसरे शहरों के लिए अनुकरणीय है। इनफैक्ट मंत्रालय में जब मैं था, एक नया प्रयास शुरू किया गया कि क्यों नहीं हम लोग मिशन से मूवमेंट, यानी जो हमारी लर्निंग मिशन में हो रही है, स्मार्ट सिटी मिशन में हो रही है, वहाँ से उस लर्निंग को पॉलिसी इंटरवेंशन के माध्यम से उन स्मार्ट सिटीज को एक नोडल पॉइंट बना करके उनके माध्यम से उसके एक्सपीरियंस को और शहरों तक ले जा करके, ऐसा हम लोग कैसे नहीं कर सकते कि जो भविष्य में हमारा अर्बनाइजेशन हो वो पूरा पूरा स्मार्ट है। स्मार्ट यानी गेट मोर फ्रॉम लेस, जो हमारे पास संसाधन हो उसी संसाधन में हम कैसे अपने नागरिकों की आवश्यकताओं की पूर्ति उनके आवश्यकता के मुताबिक कर सकते हैं। यहाँ पे न केवल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, अगर केवल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर की बात करें तो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर ही पर्याप्त नहीं हो, बल्कि इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर के ऊपर एक टेक्नोलॉजी का लेयर जो सुनिश्चित करेगा कि कैसे उनका हम ऑप्टिमम प्रयोग कर सकते हैं। इस मिशन टू मूवमेंट के बारे में हमारा प्रदेश, उत्तर प्रदेश अग्रणी बनेगा। हम ऐसे तमाम सारे स्टेप्स ले रहे हैं क्योंकि अब हमारे पास स्वच्छता के मामले में जो स्वच्छ भारत मिशन माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने 2 अक्टूबर 2014 को शुभारंभ किया था, जिसके 5 साल पूरे हुए और देश में देखते देखते स्वच्छता का एक अलग जगह काफ़ी फर्क आया, लेकिन अभी भी एक लंबा रास्ता हमें तय करना है एक एस्पिरेशनल लेवल की स्वच्छता ले जाने के लिए। और उसके लिए भी पिछले साल स्वच्छ भारत मिशन अर्बन 2.0 का लॉन्च माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने किया, जो वाटर सेक्टर में अमृत अटल मिशन फॉर अर्बन रिजुविनेशन एंड ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन, जिसकी शुभारंभ 25 जून 2015 को किया गया था, उसके भी पूरा होने के बाद अब अमृत 2.0, जिसके अंतर्गत हम शहरों को वाटर सिक्योर बनाते हैं। कैसे हर एक शहर में, हर घर में पीने का पानी हो जो स्वच्छ हो, जिससे उनकी सेहत उनसे बेहतर हो, और साथ ही साथ कोई भी हमारा पानी नुकसान न हो। वाटर को हम ट्रीट करें, उसको रिसाइकिल करें, उसको रीयूज करें, जिससे कि हमारे तमाम सारे शहर जो कि पानी की वजह से खत्म हो जाते थे इतिहास के पन्नों से, हमारे किसी शहरों की स्थिति न बनने पाए, वो अपने लोगों की आपूर्ति आवश्यकता भी पूरी कर सकें। अर्बन ट्रांसपोर्ट के बारे में न केवल मेट्रो के माध्यम से, बल्कि ट्रांसपोर्ट फॉर ऑल, साइकिल फॉर चेंज, मेकिंग द सिटीज वॉकेबल, मेकिंग नेबरहुड बेटर फॉर द ऑल काइंड्स ऑफ सिटीजन्स, चाहे बच्चे हो, बूढ़े हो, हमारी माताएं हो, बहनें हो, सबके लिए मेकिंग सिटीज मोर सिक्योर। इसके ऊपर भी हमारे राज्य में तेजी से काम प्रारंभ कर दिए गए। मैं समझता हूँ कि इसका सीधा सीधा बहुत जल्दी नागरिकों को लाभ मिलेगा। मैं संक्षेप में कहना ये चाहता हूँ कि स्मार्ट सिटी इज अ काइंड ऑफ ए जर्नी जो हर एक शहर को लेना पड़ेगा। बिल्ड इन्वायरमेंट के बारे में देखें, आज लाइट हाउस प्रोजेक्ट जिसमें से एक प्रोजेक्ट लखनऊ में भी है, चेन्नई में है, राजकोट में है, इंदौर में है, अगरतला में है, रांची में। ये हमारे जो लाइट हाउस प्रोजेक्ट है जो कि दुनिया की बेस्ट कंस्ट्रक्शन टेक्नोलॉजी को लेकर के आए हैं, जिसके माध्यम से बहुत तेजी से कंस्ट्रक्शन हो सकता है और तमाम सारे रिसोर्सेज की भी हमें सेविंग होगी। इन जो बिल्डिंग बनेगी उनकी लंबी अवधि तक वो सही हालत में रह सकेंगे, मेंटेनेंस का कॉस्ट बिल्कुल कम हो जाएगा। ऐसी टेक्नोलॉजी हमारे देश में जो कि स्मार्ट टेक्नोलॉजी हम कह सकते हैं, ऐसे स्मार्ट टेक्नोलॉजी बनाने के लिए मंत्रालय के द्वारा सारे प्रयास हो रहे हैं और उन प्रयासों का लाभ हमारा प्रदेश भी तेजी से लेगा। लोगों को आजीविका के बारे में मैं समझता हूँ पीएम स्वनिधि एक बहुत बड़ा एग्जाम्पल है, जो हमारे समाज का जो सबसे निचला तबका है व्यवसाय करने वाला, जिसे मैं नैनो एंटरप्रेन्योर्स के नाम देता हूँ, रेहड़ी पटरी पे जो काम करने वाले लोग हैं, उनको जिस तेजी के साथ लाभान्वित किया गया। हमारे प्रदेश में लगभग 8 लाख लोगों को लाभान्वित किया जा चुका है और जो बचे उनको हमने अगले 45 दिन के भीतर पूरा करने का एक मिशन चालू कर दिया, ताकि हम लोगों की जिंदगी को सुधारने के लिए उन्हें ऐसी व्यवस्था दें जिससे कि वो न केवल आय करें बल्कि आगे समृद्धि के तौर पे, समृद्धि के रास्ते पर आगे बढ़ें। एक अर्बन साइंटिस्ट है, अर्बन प्लानर है, येन गेम फ्रॉम कोपेनहेगन, डेनमार्क, जो कहते हैं सिटीज आर फॉर द पीपल, सिटीज आर नॉट फॉर द सिटी ऑफिसर्स लाइक म्युनिसिपल कमिश्नर्स, इट इज नॉट फॉर सिटी प्रोफेशनल्स, इट इज फॉर द पीपल। यानी सिटी को वो सारी चीजें करनी चाहिए जिससे कि सामान्य नागरिक की जिंदगी में आसानी हो, सामान्य नागरिक अपने कार्य को पूरा कर सके और बहुत आसानी के साथ पूरा कर सके, जिससे वो जिस किसी चीज में उनकी प्रवीणता हो उस चीज में अपना सर्वोत्तम लाभ अपने शहर को दे सके, अपने प्रदेश की अर्थव्यवस्था को दे सके, अपने देश की अर्थव्यवस्था को दे सके, तभी हमारा देश आगे बढ़ेगा। मैं समझता हूँ कि स्मार्ट सिटी ने एक नया रास्ता दिखाया है और ये 3 दिन का जो कॉन्फ्रेंस और एक्सपो है, मैं खुद घूम करके सारे एक्सपो का देखा करता था। कितने किस्म की चीजें हमें दुनिया में नई नई चीजें हो रही, हमारे देश में नई नई चीजें हो रही। अगर देश के एक कोने में कोई नई चीज होती है तो उसका लाभ देश के दूसरे कोने पहुंचना चाहिए। मैं समझता हूँ कि एक्सपो इसके लिए बहुत बड़ा एक माध्यम होता है। गांधी जी कहते थे कि हमेशा हमें अपनी खिड़की दरवाजे खोल कर रखने चाहिए, जिससे जहाँ कहीं से भी एक नई रचनात्मक पहल होती है उसका लाभ हमें मिलना चाहिए। मैं समझता हूँ कि ये एक्सपो और कॉन्फ्रेंस एक ऐसा प्लेटफॉर्म प्रोवाइड करता है जिसके माध्यम से जो नई नई तकनीकी आई है, नई नई व्यवस्थाएं आई है, नए नए किस्म की सोच आई है, जिसके माध्यम से अपने नागरिकों की जिंदगी को आसान बना सकते हैं, चाहे वो बिल्डिंग के माध्यम से, चाहे वो सैनिटेशन इम्प्रूव करने के माध्यम से, ट्रांसपोर्ट इम्प्रूव करने के माध्यम से, सिविक सर्विसेज जैसे कि आपका एजुकेशन के बारे में, हेल्थ के बारे में, इंटरटेनमेंट के बारे में हम जो प्रोवाइड कर सकते हैं, इन सारी की सारी चीज़ों को, या पानी को जो मैंने वाटर सिक्योरिटी की मैंने बात उसके बारे में हर तरीके से लोगों को कैसे आसान कर सकते हैं, उसका एक बहुत अच्छा नमूना आपको देखने को मिलेगा एग्जीबिशन में। और उसके बारे में देश भर के, इधर विदेशों के भी एक्सपर्ट्स आते हैं, चर्चा करते हैं। हमारे प्रदेश के 7 स्मार्ट सिटी के अधिकारी इसमें भाग ले रहे हैं। मैं समझता हूँ कि वो इससे जो सीखेंगे पूरे देश में या बाहर के विदेशों में जो काम हुए हैं उसका लाभ सीधे सीधे हमारे प्रदेश को मिलेगा। मैं एक बार दोबारा ITPO को और एग्जीबिशन इंडिया ग्रुप को, दोनों को अपने स्तर से बहुत बहुत बधाई दूंगा कि आपकी ये पहल, ये 7वीं पहल है और ये बहुत महत्वपूर्ण पहल हो जाती है बिकॉज ऑफ ये साल हमारे लिए महत्वपूर्ण है, आज़ादी का अमृत महोत्सव। इस पहल से जो स्मार्ट सिटी का एक रास्ता निकला है, जो स्मार्ट सिटी का जो एक कार्य हुआ है पिछले 6-6.5 सालों में, वो मिशन से मूवमेंट की तरफ चल पड़ेगा। बाकी भी शहर वही रास्ते नापेंगे, वही तौर तरीके करेंगे, जिससे कि वो अपने नागरिकों को जो संसाधन उपलब्ध है उससे बेस्ट सुविधा दे सके। आपको मुझे मौका देने के लिए मैं बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद देना चाहता हूँ। इसके साथ ही अपनी वाणी को विराम दूंगा। धन्यवाद। जय हिंद।
Good afternoon, everyone, and a warm welcome to all the panelists here. Thank you so much for taking your precious time out on this. We've been hearing a lot of sessions, on smart cities since yesterday on various topics, including urban planning, ranging to how the mission development has happened, what we have achieved, what are the challenges. This is an opportunity to hear firsthand from the people who are actually making things happen on the ground. So we have with here, the CEOs, which is the apex position of the smart city, the administrator who runs the smart city, who makes things happen. What we want to hear from them, as you've heard, that multiplicity of organizations leads to challenges. And until the leaders themselves are empowered, there is very little that can actually be affected on the ground. So one topic that we need to discuss today is what are the challenges in empowering the leaders to ensure that we achieve our mission goals. The second topic we want to talk about is something I think our country really needs to think about more and more as we progress, is the inclusivity. Inclusivity of different ethnic groups, different social groups, different economic groups, and gender. So these are the two things that we will talk about. So why don't we start initially asking the experience that, let's say, Silvassa as a city has had, and if Charmie ma'am, if you can help us understand, what were some of the challenges that you had from a governance perspective, and even more, from an inclusion perspective, what is it that you did? Because Silvassa as a city itself is very different in the way that it has come up versus many other cities.
Yeah, so thank you so much for granting me this opportunity here. So as you rightly said, that when we are looking at the development, inclusive development of our cities as smart cities, we at the administration level, we have faced certain challenges which need to be taken care of is how do we think about the marginalized groups and then bring them on board, right? So Smart City mission always mandates that we need to have citizen advisory forums and we need to conduct those meetings pretty regularly. So one thing that can be taken care of is that we actually ensure that these people, these marginalized groups are represented in a true sense. When you say that there are women who can be considered as kind of marginalized, there can be economic groups who can be marginalized, there can be social groups who can be marginalized, and we need to find out and bring them on board who can actually represent their ideas, their feedbacks, honest feedbacks about us implementing the policies on the ground as well. So the peculiarity about Silvassa is that it is a town which has emerged because of industrialization. So when we talk about the industrialization and the growth that has happened, it has been very haphazard, and due to industrialization, which saw a lot of migrant population coming in. The true demography of the Dadra Nagar Haveli and Silvassa per se is the tribal population. So the biggest challenge that we have faced till now is to see that the ideas, the tribal ideas get protected in our smart city, and that we are able to cater to the needs of the migrant population, migrant labor population, which is economically marginalized group, and then merge them together and have a plan which integrates the needs of the tribal population, who is a probably a sociologically backward or marginalized group and this economically backward group who is a migrant laborer. So that way we have implemented some of the policies which are only for the welfare of such tribal groups or for the welfare of such migrant labor groups as well. I would want to touch upon one point that in Silvassa Smart City Mission, we have come up with a policy called SPARSH, which is a scheme for affordable rental housing for these industrial laborers, in which the SPV or the administration would provide some piece of land to the industries who have employed these migrant workers, and then they would be developing labor housing complexes, boarding kind of a thing, and government would be providing them some kind of planning exemptions, for example, exemptions in FSI, setbacks, etc. So this scheme has been very well taken up in the industrialized town of Silvassa as well as the neighboring town of Daman also. And Honorable PM has also mentioned about this scheme in one of his addresses. So we wish to take this further, and we will be developing our labor hostels somewhere close to around 80 to 90 crores. Thank you.
Wonderful. So, what you're trying to say, ma'am, is that it's really important to hear the voices of the people. And by that, in process, over time, also educating the people on their rights and what they need, and building our plans basis that. Also, in providing the infrastructure that is required to help bring in the right kind of equity. I would like to, call upon, Amit sir, from who is the CEO of the Ranchi Smart City. Sir, Ranchi also does have a tribal population, also people coming in from different neighboring states and working over there. So you have an ethnic diversity that is there. In addition to this, the advantage probably that you had was Ranchi was a little more greener or a green city. It was more of a newer city. So how did you approach this issue of inclusivity? Maybe if there are some examples. And even more, what I'd like to hear from you is the governance part of it. What is it that you really need? You as an administrator, if you were given a free will saying that, write down the things that you want and you will have it to be able to achieve the final targets.
Thank you, Amit. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me for this panel discussion. And the topic today is empowering smart city leaders. First thing I would like to say that the challenges before the smart city leader is to meet the expectation of the public. And this is the biggest challenges before every civil servants working in different atmosphere and different environment. As far as Ranchi Smart City is concerned, we are fortunate enough that government of Jharkhand has provided 656 acre of land, and it's a greenfield project, and we are developing a state-of-the-art infrastructure there, and also a master plan in which we have already demonstrated our culture and environment also. I would tell you that 37% of the total area will be the green cover and the open area. And it will show how people of Jharkhand love nature. And the whole master plan of Ranchi Smart City is designed on the basis of the concept of live, learn, work and play. All the infrastructure support related to these activities are inbuilt in the master plan. So we are creating a dwelling units of around 80,000 population. 80,000 population, it means almost 16,000 households. And the working space of around 70,000 public. So the Ranchi Smart City will cater the need of 1.5 lakh population, and this type of development will definitely create a milestone how the upcoming cities should look like. So our challenge is to invite such type of developer who can uh, partner with government and develop certain amenities and the supporting infrastructure. We have conducted 3 rounds of auctions also, and we already monetized more than 60 acres of land. So right now, Ranchi Smart City has earned around 400 crore. So this project will be sustainable in the future also, first thing. And second thing, that it will definitely set a mark for other cities also to develop an ecosystem in which the smart cities should look like. Thank you.
Wonderful. So looks like, this Ranchi Smart City, the new one that's being developed, is something we should all aspire to probably go and live there sometime. It'll probably be quite beautiful if we are able to live, play, and work in the same place. Absolutely. Now, you did mention very interestingly something to note over here is the monetization that you were able to do to bring in sustainability so that you can keep providing services into the future also to your citizens. Let me call upon Ankit Asthana sir. You were one of the pioneers in the very first among the smart cities to have used land as a monetization tool. So if you can shed some light in terms of how that has helped you, and also in terms of some of the measures you've done from an inclusivity perspective, and as a leader, what are the things that if we were to reform a smart city, then what were the things that you would like to be empowered with?
Yeah, so Bhopal was probably the first smart city that came out with the land monetization policy of its own. Initially, the smart city mission was envisaged around 1,000 crore grant, which was given to each city. But then SPVs had to find their own way to make them sustainable for a longer time. Our model of smart city development was based on the refurbishment model, where a very prime location of the existing city was taken up and it was to be developed into the smart city ABD area. It came with its own challenges because we had many shops totaling to more than 1,200 odd shops which already existed there, almost 3,200 houses which were there. So we had to accommodate all these people and then proceed with what the mandate of our smart city proposal was. So in the first year itself, we came out with the land monetization policy. Till date, we've been able to sell 4 lands. But the important aspect here has been our learning from this sale. Now, the initial round of sale that happened was on a freehold basis of 4 plots of commercial land use. But now we've come to realize that if we actually need to develop ABD area in its true sense, we cannot alienate the people who were living there previously also. So herein comes the inclusion part of it. The shop owners, the dwellers who were residents of this area before Smart City came into the picture, they need to be accommodated in that particular area, because alienating them would mean that we lose the true essence of that area itself. So now we are redesigning our monetization policy based on our experience that we've gained from the sale of earlier round of 4 plots. We are coming out with another model of joint venture mode of development, where we are trying to bring in the element of affordable housing. We won't be selling the land or the title on it. We'll be getting a JV partner who will develop the residential complexes on our behalf. The residential complexes will also have mixed commercial use so that we can accommodate the previously existing shop owners who were part of the ABD area. And that ways our intention is to actually serve the purpose where we can bring in the marginalized sections of society into our mainstream ABD region. So that precisely is how we plan to move in the next 2 years, and I'm pretty sure that learning will help us plan better for future also.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. So this is also very interesting that ultimately, if you're looking at governance to happen, you really can't do away with the reality of having the finances to run with it, and that is very critical. So let's go to something which is very interesting, very different. The way, and I'm going to call upon Anshul sir over here from Ujjain. And Ujjain, now we all know, is famous for his Mahakal temple. And the whole theme that Ujjain is basing for an economic development is on the basis of this Mahakal tourism that happens. But having said that, having that, something as prominent right in the middle of a city comes with its own challenges on being able to operationalize it, to be able to manage it. So, Anshul sir, if you can shed some light on how you actually, are planning this whole city as an economic trigger.
Thanks for giving me the chance to be here and discuss what we are doing in Ujjain. So, as many of you might be knowing that Ujjain hosts one of the 12 Jyotirlings, that is Mahakaleshwar, and Ujjain also has unique distinction of holding the Sinhast, the 12-year religious congregation, which happens in four cities in India: Prayagraj, Haridwar, Nasik, and Ujjain. Apart from this 12-year event, year-long and like daily and with various seasons, religious calendar, Ujjain has lots of I would say, floating population. And this population largely comes from the neighboring states, which would be Rajasthan, which would be Gujarat, which would be from Maharashtra. So now, as we talk about inclusive development, it has many dimensions. So, like one dimension is how it is gender sensitive, how it takes care of marginalized groups. In our context, it is very important that how do we do development and how do we create infrastructure which takes care of the old, which takes care of the stakeholders which have been there since centuries, and which also takes care of the new needs. And all this infrastructure creation and this religious tourism, which boosts the economy, which enhances the GDP, how it should seamlessly merge with the requirement of the city. So, for example, because of the huge floating population, the demand on our sewerage network is uneven. The demand on our road infrastructure is uneven. So we are trying to address those issues and those gaps, critical gaps, via Smart City mission. So under this, we have created huge parking facilities on all the major roads leading to the Mahakaleshwar and Shipra area. And these parking facilities are equipped with solar power plants. So the idea is that that inclusive term, in the sense environmentally sustainable term, which we are doing. Another interesting thing which we are doing is that all the flower offerings which are offered to the Lord Mahakaleshwar and other temples, we collect them, which is like around 5 ton per day, and we convert them into incandescents and colors and other things, which are once again offered to the god. So, because there is a floating population and there is a temple tourism, so the waste which is created, how do we take care of that waste? And now, once Amrit 2 mission has been announced, so along the river bank, we are doing afforestation and we are planting trees to ensure water level is maintained and the erosion doesn't happen. Because the river should have water when the 12-year Kumbh happens, and even throughout the year, there should be continuous water. Apart from that, the old city area, which is like kind of 2,000, 3,000 year old area, it is getting infrastructure facelift via the Smart City Mission project, which involves creating smart roads, which involves changing the lighting infrastructure of the city, which involves putting up Wi-Fi poles, and which involves making the transportation and navigation easier. Apart from this, the housing part, which is being addressed via Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, and we are creating vertical housing to address the space constraint in the city. So these are various small parts via which we are doing this. Another important part is heritage conservation. So the development should not, bulldoze the old heritage. And once like we go to Europe and we go to other parts in world, so we actually see that how they have beautifully preserved their old heritage. Plus they have given tourists or visitors the facilities at per the modern standards. So this is what we are trying, that all our old ghats and facade, so we are trying to preserve them in the same old way. And just like what has happened in Kashi, so once we have expanded the whole temple area by like around 10 times, and once we also started digging, and we also end up finding old artifacts, old temple remains, and that part we are converting into a museum, in situ museum, so that old heritage is conserved. And the museum should not be, museum should not be a place where people have to specially go. It should be a kind of living museum. So once the people go over there, they can actually see the whole history of the Ujjain as a city, of the Mahakaleshwar temple and surrounding areas, and they can see how things have moved, things have progressed in last few centuries. Apart from that, the facilities for the visitors, like I mentioned, in terms of parking, in terms of transportation. So we are introducing the e-vehicles on a in a huge number, so that the evacuation of the devotees from one area to other is easy and is seamless. And the whole idea is that once all these facilities are there, the visitors who come, the tourists who come, they will spend more time in the city rather than just coming, having darshan and going back. So once they start staying back, it will, they will spend more money in the economy, and it will create jobs for the local people. So this is how the inclusive part comes in, that whatever development we are doing via smart city, how it will end up benefiting the local populace. So local priestly class and local stakeholders who are there since like time immemorial, they are getting better infrastructure. And local businesses, they are getting more business opportunities because of the infrastructure which we are creating. And this infrastructure we are creating to address the future needs also. Well, our infrastructure should be something which should be able to cater to the needs of the city for next 20, 30, maybe say 40 years. That's the whole idea across which Ujjain is visiting, and I think it's I wouldn't say unique, but it's a very different thing from what other cities are doing or the challenges other cities have. So that's a model, I think, which many other cities which are based around a single event or based around a religious tourism can learn from or emulate.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir. So if I have to, identify 2 or 3 key takeaways from, your initiative that you're doing. So first you're saying is you've gone in for a circularity economy. So whatever is getting generated, even as waste, you're using that to the maximum. You're going in for a green economy. So which is saying that, you are making it as livable as possible by planting the right kind of green cover, preserving the river, etc., the riverfront and stuff. Third, you're saying is inclusivity is the crux by which you are ensuring the heritage that has been the identity of Ujjain is preserved. And using all of these 3 and the strength of the floating population, you're kicking in an economic cycle for the local residents. So a lot of thought has got into this. So really, really wonderful, and kudos to you. The next place that I'm going to go to now is a name that sends out scintillating feelings of beauty in our mind. And it can't be anything other than Srinagar. And we are lucky to have the CEO of Srinagar with us today. So Athar sir, may I request you now, what is very interesting about, having here Ujjain, the administrator of Ujjain speak, and then followed by Srinagar. Both very, very old cities, the crucibles of, our culture. But from an administration perspective, Srinagar, is more new in the way its city administration has been formed. Now, when you have something that has just popped up with a lot of your experiences across the country to, learn from and redefine a new path. So we'd like to hear from you on your experience on this.
Thank you so much. There are broadly, I think, from that inclusion perspective, because we are talking about, there are broadly 5 points that I want to talk about that we have been doing in Srinagar. The first part is when we are talking about inclusion. So it's what kind of a regional balance or what kind of a geographical balance do we have, especially when we are talking about in the context of smart cities. So in the smart cities, every city has certain area which we call as area-based development, ABD area. So where most of our infrastructure work, most of facelifting, most of interventions are done. And then there are certain projects which are pan-city importance, but mostly in terms of IT and other projects. So there is this continuous and constant question in everybody's mind. If we are talking about smart city, Srinagar as a smart city, does it mean only that particular portion of our central business district or heritage city where we are focusing on? What about this ABD area might cater to, as one of us other colleagues was saying, say 1.5 lakh population, or so as to say maybe at max at 10% of population. What happens to the area of the city which covers 90% of the population? So this was one particular aspect that we tried to work on. that how do we include the other parts of the city in this whole smart process. That's what we did was we created the smart city as a platform to break silos. So it's not a separate entity. We have these R&B working together. I'm also the municipal commissioner of the Srinagar city. So this is what we did consciously, is that we focused on whatever funds we had for the ABD area, and the funds which were available with the municipal corporation, which are available with our other line departments, say PWD and others, to focus on every other part of the city. So that there's that sense of rationality and sense of equity to other parts of citizens also. Otherwise, what will happen is, every time there's a rain, so somebody would post a picture on social media and caption it. It's a picture of, say, his lane or just outside his house, full of water and the road in complete dilapidated condition, and write a hash Ganta Smart City. So how do we move away from that Ganta Smart City? So Smart City is not only about that particular small portion. So this was one thing which we consciously tried to do. We had all our public representatives on board, the corporators, councillors, the other local citizens, and also every HOD of different departments, that this is how we're going to go forward. So normally in context of smart cities, our discussion gets confined to the smart city funded equity projects, which come from the 1,000 crore projects. We also have the convergence component, which somehow gets neglected everywhere. So we have consciously tried to focus on that convergence portion so as to instill that sense of equity and inclusion geographically as well. So that was number one. Number two part is, we have been also actively working on the accessibility portion. So how do we make our infrastructure, how do we make our city, our markets, our public services accessible to everyone, especially to the sections who have the special needs. So that was one focus. So very important aspect was to pedestrianize the city. How do we make most of the places in the city accessible to people, accessible to citizens, accessible to tourists both? They should be able to move freely, they should be able to walk freely in the city. So that's something which we have done quite aggressively throughout the city. In fact, most of the say old city, most of the tourist city, most of the central business district of Srinagar city, we have tried to have these elements of accessibility actively and aggressively. In fact, we have dismantled a lot of existing infrastructure just to include these accessible components.
So what would these accessible components be? Would it be like CCTV, whatever, safety as an element? How would it?
Yeah, there are a number of components to it. For example, one simple would be a walkway or a pedestrian pathway. We have footpaths everywhere, but in many places the footpaths are not continuous. At some places, the height of the footpath and the carriage would be as high as 1 feet, 1.5 feet, and it's impossible for anybody to move. The junctions, it's almost impossible for any senior citizen or a lady with a child or somebody with special needs to cross the road. So how do we make these junctions safe? How do we make this the footpaths walkable for everybody, whether it's a senior citizen or a child or a lady with a kid? So all these things we have incorporated in these newer designs of the major roads that we have done in the old city, whatever footpaths and pedestrianization we are looking at. So this was one part. And besides that, how do we make our services accessible to everyone? So people should not be forced to come to the municipal corporations or to the public offices. How do we ensure that the service delivery is done at their doorsteps in a way which is accessible to them, in a way that the digital divide or the literacy divide is also taken care of? So these are some of the things that we have been trying to take care when it comes to the inclusion aspect as part of the smart city.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir. Really nice to hear, Srinagar, you're taking a holistic approach. Next, I'm going to go to Indore. And this is one city that I think all of us should just keep our ears open and listen. I mean, consistently being rated the cleanest city in India. And I had the fortune of visiting it, a couple of months ago. And you can actually see the behavioral change in the people themselves on the ground. And how did they affect that? That couldn't have been possible without inclusion. That couldn't have been possible without the leaders of the smart city, or leaders of the city, in fact, being empowered to work towards a common goal. So, Rishav sir, request you to shed some light on us, on your experiences on this.
Thanks, Amit. So as you just mentioned, Indore is the cleanest city of India, and we take much pride in it. But the kudos, and I think the total credit of the cleanliness goes out to the people of Indore. And I would like to substantiate this statement by giving a few examples. First, 100% segregation of waste is being done at the household level, which is something which is unprecedented in India. Initially, we started with just 2 bins, the dry waste and the wet waste. Slowly, we moved on to 4 bins, in which we included the domestic hazardous waste. And apart from that, the pads, the diapers part. And now we have come to 6 bins. And the best part is 100% households of Indore are following 6 bins. I think this sense of cooperation, this sense of pride which people of Indore take in being the #1 city in India has everything to do with the kind of cooperation that the administration gets from people. Now coming to the second aspect, this was the segregation of waste aspect. Now Indore again takes pride in becoming the first water plus city in India. What is water plus? Water plus means that not even a single drop of sewer of Indore goes to public water bodies. Now there are 2 aspects to being a water plus. First, you let all the nalas flow through the city, and just when the nala meets the water body, the river or the canal, we just tap the nala over there using a pipeline and take the pipeline to the nearest sewage treatment plant. This is one way of achieving it. But there is a second, more difficult, more challenging, but a true way of achieving water plus is that you have to tap each and every household such that not even a single drop of sewer goes in the open, not even in a very localized nala. And that effort is not possible without the cooperation of people. We can build primary lines, we can build secondary lines, but we cannot force people to actually take out their output to the secondary lines. Those tertiary lines have to be borne by citizens themselves, and this is a costly affair. But the amount of pride that people take in being the #1 city in India is the reason that people even spent somewhere around 25,000, 30,000 of their own pocket so that this outfall doesn't go in open and it falls into the secondary lines. And now, after that, we have achieved the cleanliness part of it, we have achieved the water part of it. Now we are looking at the third component, the air pollution part of it. And again, people of Indore, hats off to them. When we went to them and said that these are some of the problems. For example, the boilers, the diesel run boilers, the biomass or the wood run boilers, they are a major source of pollution, air pollution. So when we requested them that we can shift them to piped natural gas based boilers, but that would require some amount of costing. But the administration, municipal corporation, Smart City is there to help them out, to reach out to the vendors who shall be shifting those boilers. And we tried to convince them that it is for the benefit of the future, for their future generations. People came forward of their own, and many industries just in the past 6 months, have transformed their boilers to low emission boilers. Second, a major source of air pollution is loaders. So we try to convince people of actually using e-loaders, the electric loaders, which are a totally pollution-free device. And again, we are very happy to announce that people took that initiative also, and majority of our loaders have been replaced with e-loaders. Third, we started a behavioral change drive, red light on to engine off. Basically, we have to turn off our engine whenever we see a red light. And again, people are so much henceforth coming that now on every junction we can see whenever we have a red light, people are actually switching off their vehicles. So I think the people's participation, which is required for the growth of any city, is exemplified in Indore.
So, what is the secret recipe by which you enthuse the people? I think every administrator, every citizen wants to really understand what is the secret? How did you even enthuse them in the first place to be participative?
Okay, so I think there are 2 or 3 aspects for the answer to this question. First, I think it is the ethos of Indore. Every city has its own ethos, its own culture, its own thinking pattern. Now, that's my personal opinion that Indore is a beautiful mix of orthodox cultural patterns and very modern aspirational values. While on one hand, we can see the rural outlook in which integration with everyone, the community aspect, respecting the administration, all these things are inbuilt in the nature of citizens, while at the same time, they are so much aspirational in their outlook, and they feel and they take so much pride in it that they want to sustain it. And now the number 1 tag is not being sustained by the administration but by the people and by the sheer force of the people. They don't want to lose that tag. This is the first aspect regarding the people. Second, again, I must appreciate the quality and ethos of the public representatives of Indore. Their approach is so modern and their agenda is so clear that they want to have this tag of being the number 1, the cleanest city.
The pride.
The pride factor with the public representatives is again a huge delivery factor. And third comes the implementation part. How do you basically keep on getting this momentum? Now that comes from the civil society part of it. Behind every door-to-door garbage collection vehicle, we have a team of NGOs working along with it, motivating people, teaching people, regularly interacting with them. If they are doing some kind of a mistake, even spot fines are there. So those set of NGOs are really actually helping people. And lastly, coming to the topic of the day, the inclusive part of it. I believe all the actions of municipal corporation or the smart city are targeted so that every household, every section of society can have a better livelihood opportunity. It can have better working conditions. It can have better leisure opportunities. And lastly, all the sections of society are taken along. Be it we can say the gender aspect, be it we can say regarding the economic aspect, or be it even the age aspect. If we talk about simply the nurturing neighborhood program, which Indore is running very successfully, so we are targeting the children aspect over there. And then coming to the Bhikshuk program, which again is a tremendous success in Indore, in which we are targeting the lowest economic class of Indore. And lastly, we are targeting the rag pickers. One important corollary whenever we go for door-to-door collection is that rag pickers, they totally become out of job. So how we can include them in the economy of Indore? So even we are focusing on that aspect. So when we talk of inclusive leadership, we talk of inclusive development. Only then it is possible for all the sections of people to come together, and then they can contribute towards the cleanliness aspect of it.
Wonderful. Great story, sir. Great to hear. Thank you so much. I hope, we all as citizens can learn to, actually try and imbibe some of those ethos that are there. Because if you're saying it's the ethos of Indori people which have helped them achieve, what all of us want to actually see is a cleaner and better city. And if, we from other cities have not been able to do that, I think we need to imbibe some of those ethos in us. So thank you so much. Before we go, to the public session, just to ask from the public any comments or any questions if they have, I have a question. So I have a question for Charmie ma'am, Rishav sir and Athar sir. If there is one thing that you have to ask, let's say, to Secretary Mohua, one power that you need to help you as an administrator to effect change on the ground, what is it that you would ask for? Charmie ma'am?
I would say better coordination among the agencies and the decentralized decision making of it. I mean, it can work both ways. There are pros and cons of it. But as we talked about the inclusion part of it earlier, and how I am of the strong opinion that the society at large needs to be represented when we have to move forward in the direction of smart, inclusive, and sustainable cities. A larger decentralization would mean a lot. And probably the expansion and extension of the SPV for coming years as well, so that when we have already started this mission and when we are halfway through there, let us take on the challenge and how it was rightly pointed out by one of the panelists, that let's not just focus on that area-based development, but let us move further to the neighborhoods also, and then take on the region, and then probably the entire territory or the state.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rishav sir.
Actually, that's a really interesting question what to ask from the Secretary Mahua. Basically, that's saying what to ask from the government of India.
Absolutely, that's what I mean.
So my belief is, when we gained independence, we had a lot of ground to cover.
Sorry?
We had a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah.
So our democracy was very immature at that time. So the true sense of federalism and the powers being actually delegated to the city administration was not there. In the coming 40 years, we had some kind of reforms. We had some sense of partial federalism. But now that we have matured as a democracy, and now that we feel that a single umbrella solution cannot fit every city has its own sets of challenges. So what suits Bhopal may not suit Indore. So with respect to that, regarding the municipal corporation functions, definitely we have a good sense of federalism, we have a good sense of independence while making policies. But now when we try to cover other aspects, like health, now health cannot be considered in silo. We have to take pollution control board as well. We have to take women and child development as well. We have to take education system as well. But that does not fall under the purview of the municipal corporation. So having good changes or actually actionable outcomes in those fields. So where we feel actually our powers are very limited. So I would like to request or ask the government of India in that sense that now since we have matured as a democracy, more powers need to be delegated to the cities.
So basically 74th constitutional amendment in its true sense is what you're saying. Athar sir.
I think my point is a little bit more, as Charmie ma'am has just said. The Smart City SPVs, the whole structure is very unique in the sense that, number one, it's very close to the ground. You have participation, you have stake of the state governments or union territory governments and the local bodies. At the same time, you also have a stake of the central government. Yet the independence, yet the kind of powers which are delegated at the level of, say, implementing agency is quite immense as compared to any other agency. For example, I am also holding the charge of municipal commissioner. So now that flexibility would not be there in that sense, or that would not be with, say, somebody who is running an R&B department. Correct. So this structure is quite unique. And in these past few years, now the real consolidation has happened. So we have seen how does this work, how does it operate, and it has come up as a really very important change agent or a kind of a tool in improving the cities. And smart cities, it's not a one-time affair. It's a process that's going to continue. So my request on that side would be that the smart city mission, rather than keeping it like a mission, it should be a continuous agency supported by central government as well as by the state government throughout. So that's what naturally now the scope starts expanding from ABD areas to other areas. Newer elements get included as we move 5 years onwards. The population pressure, the needs, they are going to change. New technologies are going to come in. So how do we incorporate that? In fact, from the technology perspective, smart cities have also been one of the best ways in which the technology import to cities has happened. In Srinagar, unfortunately or fortunately, we have been, I would call ourselves as last movers. So in the first 4 years of the mission, we haven't done most of the work. So what we did was slightly towards the last leg of it. Now what happened is by this time, most of the other cities had implemented a lot of their projects, whether we are talking about IT projects, the ICCCs, the traffic management systems, the road redevelopment projects. Now at this stage, we had a lot to learn and just imbibe from other cities how they had done it. So we have heavily capitalized on this last mover advantage. And my sense is that with this system, we have been able to get in a lot of technology. So my request on that would be it needs to sustain, it needs to continue rather than be a one-time affair or one-time mission.
Perpetuity. My second question is to Ankit sir, Amit sir and Anshul sir. What do you see as the biggest threat to urban development? Just one, I know there could be many, but one, the primary most. And in probably one sentence, what would be the best mitigation measure for that threat? Ankit sir.
I think the basic threat to urban development would be the whole definition of development itself. Perfect. Because I can see from my own personal experience, if we go back 20 years in time, urban sprawl was a concept that did not even emerge. Cities were envisaged to be very large living organic entities, and now we see the time when we are talking about how to control urban sprawl so that municipal services can be provided to a compact area with limited resources. So the whole process in which we are designing our development timeline or our development milestones needs a rethink, and therein comes the whole concept of participative governance, what Rishav from Indore was mentioning, implementing 74th Amendment in its true sense. Because unless we have consultation process, unless we have the have-nots on the table representing their own demands, charting out their needs and what exactly the municipal administration needs to do to deliver basic services and important critical infrastructure to them. Till then, we cannot have a true right model of urban development.
Thank you. Amit, sir?
So just to add on to that, I would say the biggest threat to urban development, as I see, is how we define urban. So urban development, as we see all over India, be it NCR region or be it any other city, it happens in the urban agglomerations, and it follows a very economic logic. But our administrative boundaries, they are limited to the cities, to districts, to urban areas, and we often see this legislative mismatch, or this who administers that area mismatch in many urban areas. So there be villages which are practically cities, but they are not under the ambit or preview of the urban local body. Or same thing happens with the master plan. And just touching upon again what Rishav sir said, that once you look at the problems which are holistic in nature, be it air pollution, be it health, be it transportation, there are multiple agencies involved into it. But all those agencies are not working or are not in tandem with the local body. So to the development, to the urban development, how do we define urban and how do we deal with the urban is, I think, is a very challenge, is a threat which we need to overcome.
Amit, sir?
Biggest threat to the urban development is the urban sprawl, which is happening in the slum area and creating intra-city imbalances. So this one is the biggest threat to the urban development, and I think the inclusive urban development policies like a smart city is providing. In Ranchi Smart City also, we are creating a space, living a space for economically weaker section also, and we are planning. We have developed a master plan for whole citizen, not for the economic have and not for the have-nots. So how we are including them in our urban policy and creating sustaining infrastructure for them, this one is the opportunity available for urban development.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I would like to open, the forum now for questions from the public. If there's anyone, please raise your hand if you'd like to ask the panel any questions that you have. Yes, please. The mic over here.
Hello everyone, I'm Devendra from Informatics Bangalore. I've been attending all the sessions since yesterday. Yesterday also it was mentioned comprehensive and all utilization of resources. Everything is talked about. Many people talked about smart cities, how the main aim of having use of technology for upgradation of life. Now, what we believe always that the smartness of the citizen is possible only when there's education, and I did not find any discussion on that. And what we have seen, many people talk about it, social media university, WhatsApp university and all forwards and all. So people have time for this. What if we give them the option of library, digital library, so that they'll be engaged in reading? Right now the reading culture has almost gone. If you see the public libraries in US or Europe, it's a huge attention has been given by government also. Now there is opportunity through Smart City initiative that we have already infrastructure available in our all smart cities. Public libraries are there, huge buildings are there. What is lacking is funds to them. They have got many rare books, many manuscripts available with them, but everything is available in a print format which is just there in the library itself. How we can, earlier people used to go to library, how library can now go to people using the technology, and if their reading habits are started again, I'm very sure.
Can you please?
My question is how you all can really focus on this also, that if we can give any option to the public at large in the smart city to improve their knowledge so that they can become smart in real sense. So question to all CEOs here, if you can really give opportunity for people to upgrade. Thank you.
Anyone would like to quickly take up an answer? He's actually answered it by saying digital library, but anything?
So maybe I will just answer like what initiatives we have taken in Ujjain. So we have taken 3 different initiatives. Like you mentioned, we have an old museum which has old, even Ashoka time artifacts. That museum we are reviving using Smart City funds. On the other hand, we have a planetarium. So that planetarium we are upgrading it to the world standard, so that children have better exposure to the science. And third very important thing which we are doing is we are creating digital centers in various gardens in the city. So the whole idea is that there is a room and it has all the gadgets, electronic gadgets, computers, laptops, iPads, and children from what is the theme like inclusive development from the have not background can also come over there and get exposed to the technology and become comfortable with it. So these are small different ways via which at Ujjain we are trying to address the digital literacy part and the reading habit of the people.
Any other question? Yes, please.
Good afternoon, one and all present here. This is Lavi. I'm from Governance Now. So my question to you is, sir and ma'am, how do you measure the citizen satisfaction level, and what are the steps being taken to continuously improve it? So anyone who would like to take up the question?
Would anyone,
Yeah, I can
Charmie
take
ma'am?
that.
Yeah.
So hi, Lovely. Basically, if we talk about measuring the citizen satisfaction, then we would have to come up with something called as happiness index, right? Like something that Bhutan follows. So exactly, we don't have any such indicator as such. But as I spoke earlier, that it has been mandated by the Smart City mission as well, that we keep the meetings, regular meetings of the Citizen Advisory Forum, where the representatives of people from various aspects and various social economic background are also present. And as you know that these days social media is very active, proactive I would rather say. So whenever there have been examples also cited here, how that in one part of the city something is going wrong, and the smart city gets tagged very easily. And we do, all of us, I'm certain here that all of the smart city administrations, they consciously keep an eye, and also not just an eye but also act upon those grievances of the citizens as soon as possible and as far as possible. So I hope that answers your question a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take one last question.
Amit, I would like to add
just
over
one
here.
last question.
Amit?
Yeah,
I would
sorry.
like to add. So basically, satisfaction is a very abstract concept. And nowadays, we are too much enamored by numbers, by statistics. We want a number for everything. And we know statistics cannot be totally banked upon. So I think in order to measure satisfaction levels, which again is an intangible concept, we have to look at intangible things only. If we can see the amount of cooperation being made by people towards projects of the administration, I think that is a good measure of satisfaction. Just to give you an example, there is a very famous road in Indore, Mahatma Gandhi Road, and the stretch of it lies in Smart City area, and we are trying to broaden the road. So there were around 400 obstructions in the form of residential and commercial establishments over there. So when we went over there, because there is no internal policy of land acquisition within the corporation, so what we offer in return is increased FAR, basically the TDR certificates. So again, it is very unimaginable that 400 establishments came forward they broke their own homes so that the administration, the corporation can make the road with a long-term vision that whatever property that they will have at the end, the property rates will be so high that they will be very fairly compensated. But if they are satisfied that road will not be dug up for the next 1 or 2 years and administration won't even have a look at it, if they are satisfied and they have a trust upon the administration and corporation that yes, if they have taken up the project and the road shall be completed within a stipulated amount of time, only then such kind of public initiatives can come forward. And yes, we are making that road. We have actually installed timers also. We have a timer of 180 days. We have a countdown over there. And so people have a trust that yes, a good quality road will be built upon it. So I think if we have to measure the satisfaction, we just have to get away from mere numbers and look at the cooperation of the citizens towards the administration.
The timer, I think, is a brilliant idea. It instills a lot of confidence, in people. We'll have one last question, please, and we've already exceeded.
Sir, here. Yeah. Can I?
Okay. We've had 2 from here. I was hoping somebody from that side also.
Okay, I'll finish very small one. First of all, sir, compliments to all the CEOs for making that real difference in our cities. Now, my question is, any such mission will end at a particular point of time, any SPVs. So, how do we ensure that they are sustainable in the long term? When I say sustainable long term, unless and until a lot of these models are not on a base of financial support on their own going forward. So any initiatives where each of the city will financially survive on its own when the subsidies or the support, economic support from the central government is withdrawn. So any initiatives from the CEOs on this, I think will be a great help, because when the subsidies or the financial assistance is drawn back, there is all the possibility the local government will fall back on the earlier mechanism of doing the earlier old things. So what great work being done should not be lost on a longer time. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon. Basically, as I earlier told you that Ranchi Smart City is a greenfield project, and we have land around 656 acre of land, and we are in a process of monetizing it, and we are expecting around 2,500 crore from it. And apart from residential plots, rest of the all plots have cess. So we will collect annual cess on that, and from that fund also we will sustain our SPV in the coming future also.
I would just like to add a little bit to it. The financial sustainability is not only important for the SPV, it's also important for the projects. For example, if anywhere we have, say, somebody must have done, say, ICCC has been made somewhere, public toilets have been made somewhere, road redevelopment has been made. It's a one-time investment that has happened. Now, the bigger challenge is the operation and maintenance of all these assets or whatever is being done. So not only for the SPV, but also for the sustenance of whatever initiatives is, this financial, in fact, independence to an extent is important. In Srinagar, what we have tried to do is also monetize some of the assets in such a way that we have a continuous revenue stream over a period of time. So, for example, we have taken a number of PPP projects. Say, one project is our smart poles. We have done it on PPP basis, in which certain services the private player gets some use to it, and in turn he is giving us a continuous revenue to us. Similarly, some of our parking lots. Similarly, we have one, say, Srinagar data network, which is an intra-city fiber optic network, spanning around 200 kilometers. This is again something which we plan to monetize in addition to the use that it has been intended for the government services. So this is one thing. Similarly, we're working on the Jhelum riverfront development. So along with the whatever interventions we have done, we have created those certain sources, whether they are in terms of creating say coffee shops, building certain other avenues which would be revenue generating in addition to generating livelihood to the people. So this is one thing which in Srinagar we have tried to keep consciously in mind, that over a period of time, this fund, the money from these different projects, should not only sustain the SPV but also sustain the whatever maintenance or whatever upgradation part is required. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, so the 2 points that have previously been mentioned about land monetization, as I had mentioned, Bhopal had come out with its own land monetization policy. That's one of the measures where we are targeting proceeds of around 3,300 CRs to be realized over a period of next 3 years. The PPP mode, many projects similarly have been taken up, Smart Pole project and others. Another thing that Bhopal SPV is doing is remodeling itself on a more consultancy and advisory role. For example, we have very state-of-the-art IT infrastructure being set up in the form of integrated command and control room. So now what we are starting to do is we are giving our servers for hosting to municipal bodies. We are charging money for it. We have also started consultancy services for other departments. For example, police department recently Madhya Pradesh has introduced the police commissionerate system in Bhopal and Indore. So for Bhopal police commissioner office, they are trying to set up a video wall, a state-of-the-art command control room of their own, where they can have feed from our traffic management system and refurbish it with their own system. So we are providing them not just the consultancy part, but the execution part also. So this also raises revenue for us and supports our IT initiatives and other projects that are ongoing.
Yeah, thank you everyone. And I'm sorry, but we really have to end the session now. We are running out of time. The organizers have, indicated. Can we have it later? Because I think there are other sessions that will happen, and if we delay, then the further program gets delayed. So I would request that, we close the session now, and maybe we can catch up with, the administrators separately later on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, speakers are going to be there in the speaker lounge. Probably you can connect with them there. So thank you to all our speakers, and I would like to invite Ms. Chandrika Beher, the Director, Exhibitions India Group, to kindly present the mementos. Thanking Mr. Athar Aamir Khan, the Commissioner, CEO, Srinagar Smart City Limited. Thanking, in fact, all of them for sharing their experiences, how their cities they have been able to make more inclusive, make more smart, keeping the ethos, the soul of the city intact, scaling the livability index in their respective cities, maintaining the aesthetics and the beauty of the city, and what are their future plans for their cities, and what the expectations they have from the central government. Also certain concerns and threats which they foresee. And each of the cities, they stand out, they have the USP, they have been able to further highlight that. They're focusing on a more citizen-centric approach, a citizen-driven approach, citizen participative approach. So we'll close with a group photograph. And how we also heard from them, how they are focusing on not just area-based development, but a more entire city, a holistic city development. Catering to the satisfaction of the citizens. And as was mentioned, the citizen cooperation is the best indicator of citizens' satisfaction. Thank you once again.